The silence of the forest was the first oddity. You're walking on a hiking trail, not even in the deepest part of the season, and yet there's no bird whistle, no insect buzz, no rustle of leaves. As if someone had covered this patch of taiga with a giant glass dome. I, Semyon, noticed it almost as soon as I turned off the main path for a quick, beautiful photo near a lone, unnaturally perfect boulder. The sun was already setting, staining the pine trunks a bloody copper color. I quickened my pace, mentally cursing myself for the adventure. I should have returned to camp, not gone deeper into the thicket. The navigator on my phone showed I was moving parallel to the trail, but for some reason, the distance to it wasn't shrinking. The battery was dying. That's when I heard the crunch, a clear, hollow sound like someone stepping on dry branches 20 meters behind. I turned around. No one. An animal, I thought, gripping my folding knife in my sweaty palm. The crunch repeated, but now from the side and closer. I froze, listening to the silence. And I heard breathing, not my own, alien, ragged and wet, right above my ear. I bolted, not picking my path. Thorny branches lashed my face. Roots tried to trip me. There was no sound of pursuit behind me, but there was a sensation, dense, physical, that I was being watched. Not chased, but precisely watched. Like a predator playing with doomed prey. I ran out into a clearing. In its middle stood the very same hunter's cabin I had been looking for on the map as a point of salvation. Old, sagging, with a dark gap of a doorway. The decision was instant. I could barricade myself there, wait out the night. Inside smelled of mold, dust, and something sour fermented. I slammed the door, propped it with a piece of a broken bench, sat on the rotten floorboards, and tried to catch my breath. In the tiny window, the last scrap of sunset was burning. Then it went out. Pitch darkness fell, and then the floorboards creaked, not under me. In the corner of the cabin, a slow, drawn-out creak, as if someone invisible was rising from a bed I hadn't seen in the dark. The air became thick and icy. I pressed myself against the wall, not daring to breathe. The creak repeated closer now. A step, a pause, another step. Between steps, that same wet, gurgling breath. It was filling the entire hut. My fingers found a lighter in my pocket. It was a last idiotic attempt to understand, to see the enemy. I flicked it. The flickering flame snatched something from the gloom for just a second, but it was enough. It stood 2 steps away from me, tall, hunched, with unnaturally long arms almost to the floor. Its skin was the color of rotting birch bark and looked damp, sticky. But the most terrifying thing was its face, or rather the lack of it. In place of features, just a flat, smooth, clay-like surface. And in its very center, a small, childish, toothless mouth stretched with the same skin. It was open and smacking quietly, as if tasting my terror. I screamed. The lighter went out from my own breath. In the dark, there was a wet, slapping sound. It took the final step. An icy, slimy touch wrapped around my wrist. Its grip was weak, like a sick child's, but irresistible. It pulled, not towards the door, deeper into the hut, into that very corner. I resisted, clawed at the floorboards with my free hand, but I was being dragged slowly, inexorably across the floor. It no longer smelled of mold, but of a sweetish stench of decay and old, dried blood. My back hit something hard. An edge? No, it was the bed, the very one, invisible in the dark, dry, creaking boards. The creature leaned over me, its breath, smelling of damp earth and mushrooms, enveloped my face. Its featureless mask was inches from my eyes. I squeezed my eyes shut, bracing for pain, for tearing. But no pain came, only a quiet, whispering sound emanating from somewhere behind that mask. It sounded like the gurgling of water, but it formed words. No, one word. It repeated it over and over, tenderly, almost maternally. Place, place, my place. And I understood everything. This wasn't an animal. This was the home. The cabin itself, the clearing, this patch of forest. It was its spirit, its guardian, its hungry womb. It doesn't eat flesh. It takes up space. The space of the one who came here and stayed forever. The grip weakened. I opened my eyes in the dark. Its outline dissolved, but I felt it. I felt the bedboards beneath me growing warmer, how the dust on them ceased to be dust and became part of my skin, how my thoughts began to slow, grow heavy, turning not into memories, but into the quiet creak of floorboards and the rustle of cobwebs in the corners. The hunger was gone. Only peace remained. Eternal, wooden, dark peace. I took my place, and tomorrow, perhaps, another hiker will come here for a beautiful photo and will hear the silence and the crunch of branches behind their back. Good night. You never hear it walk. That was the first thing we realized. The forest has its own sounds. The creak of a branch under its own weight, the rustle of a mouse in last year's leaves, the distant cry of a bird. And then there's the sound of footsteps, your own and your partner's, but not its. We were on the second day of a hike, following a route we'd drawn on an old map ourselves. We'd gone far off any trail. The idea was to truly get away from it all. On the evening of the second day, Misha, walking ahead, suddenly stopped dead in his tracks. Did you hear that? What? Sounded like a dry branch snapping right behind us. We froze, listening intently. Nothing, just the blood pounding in our temples. Must have imagined it, he grunted, but there was a thin, web-fine crack in his voice. We set up the tent on a small clearing by a stream. Darkness fell rapidly. The forest, once green and friendly, turned black and thick as tar. We lit a fire, and its crackle was our only defense against the sudden, almost physical silence that pressed in. We spoke in hushed tones, as if afraid to wake someone, and then I saw it. Between the tree trunks, 30 meters from the edge of the firelight, stood a figure, tall, impossibly thin. It wasn't moving, just standing there, watching our fire. I didn't shout. couldn't, just slowly, very slowly, raised my hand and pointed for Misha. He turned around. The figure was gone, as if it had never been there. A bear? An elk? He whispered. But I saw the same chilling terror in his eyes. Animals don't stand like that, don't watch like that. We decided not to sleep, to keep watch. I took the first shift. Misha crawled into the tent, but didn't unroll his sleeping bag, just sat there, hugging his knees. I threw more wood on the fire, trying not to look toward where it had stood. My back itched from an unseen gaze, and that's when I heard it. Not footsteps, a quiet, barely perceptible sound, like someone very carefully, so as not to disturb, running a palm over the tent fabric, not on my side. On Misha's side, I froze. The sound came again, slowly, almost tenderly. A muffled groan came from the tent. I lunged for it, yanked the zipper down. Misha was sitting there, face buried in his knees, trembling with a fine, constant shiver. "You heard that?" he exhaled. I nodded. We both stared at the tent wall on his side. It was smooth, no wrinkle, no dent. But we both saw the fabric there was slightly damp, as if from mist or from breath. We didn't speak after that, just sat back to back, staring into different sectors of the dark, clutching our knives and whistles. The fire died down. We were afraid to add more branches. What if the light attracted it? And we were terrified of when the light would go out completely. Then dawn came, grey, murky, blurring the outlines of the trees. With the first rays of sun piercing the pine needles, the tension eased. Without a word, we started frantically packing up camp. We had to leave. Now, when the tent was rolled up and the backpacks fastened, Misha suddenly touched my shoulder. He was whiter than snow. "Look," he whispered. On the damp earth where I'd seen the figure, a footprint was clearly imprinted. A human footprint, barefoot. But the toes were unnaturally long, almost claw-like. And the depth of the impression suggested that whatever made it was incredibly, frighteningly heavy. We ran without looking back, stumbling over roots and gasping. We ran until we tumbled out onto an old logging road. Only now, back home, did I realize the most terrifying part. When Misha pointed to that footprint, there was only one, a single impression, as if it had stood there, unmoving, all night, on one foot. The other footprint could be anywhere, right behind you, and you never hear it walk. It all started with a feeling that there were too many of us. We were walking along a narrow trail in an old forest, the four of us. I was last. At first, I could hear the footsteps of the three ahead, the crunch of twigs under Lena's boots, the light click of Kirill's trekking poles, Dima's heavy breathing under his enormous backpack. Then I heard a fifth set of footsteps, clear, measured, in time with my own, but half a step behind. I looked back. No one. just a dense wall of moss and fir trees closing in behind me, as if the trail was overgrowing the moment we passed. Just imagining things, I thought, blaming the fatigue. We'd been hiking for 6 hours. Half an hour later, Lena, who was walking first, stopped. Her face was white. "Who's whistling?" she asked quietly. We listened. The forest had gone silent. No birds, no insects, just the wind in the treetops, like a distant sigh. "No one was whistling," Kirill said grimly. But I had heard it too. A soft, clear sound, 2 notes. As if someone was signaling. We decided to make camp before it got dark. We found a more or less level clearing at the base of a rocky outcrop that looked like a sleeping giant. While setting up the tent, Dima discovered his folding knife, which he always carried on his belt, was missing. He swore he'd put it in his backpack pocket that morning. Dusk fell instantly, as if someone had poured thick ink into the sky. We sat by the fire, eating buckwheat, talking about nothing, too loudly and too cheerfully. We didn't want to admit we all felt the same thing. We were being watched. Not by an animal. Animals make noise, have a smell, you can sense them. This was a quiet, patient attention, as if the forest itself had fallen silent and was listening to its guests. I went to fetch water from a stream about 50 meters from camp. My flashlight beam snatched roots that looked like fingers and trunks standing in tight formation from the darkness. The stream babbled softly and mournfully. I bent down to fill the bottle, and the beam slid across the opposite bank. On the other side, between 2 birch trees, stood a person, tall, too thin, in dark clothing that merged with the twilight. His face wasn't visible, just a black void. He wasn't moving. He just stood there, looking in my direction. An icy lump formed in my throat. I slowly, very slowly, straightened up, not taking my eyes off him. My finger trembled on the flashlight button. I turned it off and on again to make sure it wasn't a trick of light and shadow. The bank was empty. I ran back, stumbling over roots, feeling that silent emptiness behind me pulling at my back like a magnet. At camp, I didn't say anything, just sat closer to the fire. That night, I woke up to a sound. The exact same 2 whistling notes we'd heard during the day. Now they came from right outside the tent wall, right by my ear. I froze, holding my breath. Next to me, in his sleeping bag, Dima stirred. "Do you hear that?" I whispered. "I hear it." His whisper was tight with fear. We lay there, clutching the silence, listening to our hearts pounding in unison. Then the zipper on the tent entrance creaked. It didn't fly open, it just slowly, centimeter by centimeter, slid down. The black slit let in the smell of damp pine needles and wet earth, and cold. A piercing, unnatural cold. I saw that slit. I saw something peering in. There were no eyes. There was just a thick, bottomless darkness, denser than the one outside. Suddenly, the zipper sharply closed itself again. From outside came a soft, wet sound, as if something large and soft had peeled away from the canvas and dragged itself off into the forest. In the morning, we silently packed up camp and almost ran back down the trail. No one spoke about the night. We just walked, our footsteps rapid and frantic. We reached the edge of the forest, the old sawmill where we'd left the car. The sun was shining brightly, and the fear began to slowly let go. While Kirill was rummaging in the trunk, Dima suddenly gasped strangely. He pulled his missing folding knife from the pocket of his jacket, which had been lying in the car the whole trip. It's here, he said blankly, but I didn't put it here. Lena, opening the car door, shrieked. On the passenger side window, on the inside, as if written by someone's finger in the light dust, was one word: stayed. I turned to look at the forest. There, in the thickest part of the trees, at the last fork before the field, stood a tall, too thin figure. This time, I saw it in daylight, and I understood it wasn't outside. It was waiting for us inside the forest, inside our heads. It was waiting for us to come back, because a hike isn't just the way forward, it's also the way back, and it always knows you return, you or someone else. It's very patient. It has all the time in the world. And now it knows the way to our car and to our home.